Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Detroit Sports Sit Down. My name is Tom Murphy Jr., and today we have a very special episode with a very special guest. We have Neal Ruhl. Neal, you're the voice of the Oakland Grizzlies, Detroit City FC, and a number of other things. You normally would be very, very busy this time of year, but with the coronavirus shutdown, it's tough times for everybody. But I imagine you've got to be getting a little restless at home right now with no live sports to cover.
Yeah, well, it's a double-edged sword with me. I mean, given the nature of my job, I spend a lot of time traveling. I mean, just a ton of time traveling, and it's year-round because I do the television and radio for the Oakland Grizzlies, so I travel with them all college basketball season. I fill in occasionally for the Detroit Pistons, so that'll be a trip or two per year. And then I also do USL Soccer for ESPN+. So we do all that out of a studio down in Fort Lauderdale. So I had a 25-game package that I did last year for them. So I would go back and forth to Fort Lauderdale probably about 11 to 13 times a summer as well. So it's nice that I do get a bit of a break here to spend the time with the family because, quite frankly, I don't get that time typically. So it's been nice in that respect. However, I mean, the flip side of that coin, the timing was pretty awful, as April is usually one of my bigger freelance months of the year. I had contracts set up already. I was going to do the Horizon League Tennis Championships for ESPN Plus because that was at the University of Michigan this year. That was the weekend of the NFL Draft. I was drawn up to do the Pistons-Bucks game in Milwaukee at the end of March. Detroit City FC is going to local television in the Detroit area. All of those games got wiped out. So, I mean, economically for me, it was pretty disastrous, but you always get grounded when you take a look around and you see what other people are going through. And, does it suck to lose out on that money? I mean, yeah, certainly it does. Does it suck to not be able to provide that money for my family? Yeah, it does. But I'm one of the lucky ones, man. I've always said this when I was working, not working, all that. I mean, the job I get to do is a gift that I'm given. And a lot of people would stand in line for a long time to be able to do what I do. And, I'm in a situation, my wife is a teacher, and they're still working right now. She's working harder than she's ever worked before, trying to make sure that education continues on. I mean, she's really one of those people, too, that are out on the front lines of all this. And you look around, and there will be just such total financial devastation across the board for millions of people. And I read about that every day, millions of people filing for unemployment, stuff like that. Losing some money really doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore when you look at what other people are going through. So, again, was the timing unfortunate? Certainly it was, but I'm still one of the lucky ones out there regardless of what happens.
Absolutely. So many interesting aspects about your career. The one thing I'd like to know is how do you balance your styles with the different between covering a college basketball game has to be a much different situation than filling and covering the Pistons, while covering basketball has got to be such a different dynamic than broadcasting a soccer game. So do you find your own style fits into all these different avenues, or do you switch things up for different situations?
I mean, my level of preparation and the way I organize my information is the same through all the sports that I've done and through all the sports that I continue to do. I mean, my little spot charts I set up, I have a color-coded system for everybody, for every player. And I break down those color codes based on, bio information, like interesting little tidbits that pique my interest as a fan, just a general sports fan. 'Cause I've been a sports fan ever since I can remember. So if I come across something interesting, a little tidbit about somebody, like if their father played in the NFL or something along those lines, I have a certain color code for that versus stats versus career highs and those types of things. So the way I have this color coordinate, I've been doing this for going on 8-9 years now. So the preparation's been consistent in the manner and the subject style that I produce it and I put it all together. So I don't have to, quote-unquote, memorize a lot of things. I mean, I do my due diligence. I do video work when that's provided. But the preparation's always the same across the board. So I don't have to memorize a whole bunch of facts about everybody, because when I research these things, and this comes through years of doing it. This isn't something that I picked up on and had it mastered right away. This is something that came through years of doing it. I'm just efficient with the way that I look things up. So everything's right there all the time, and I'm ready to roll at a moment's notice. Yeah, certainly there's some different cadence to the amount of conversation you can have during a game, and I've always said this: NBA basketball is the quickest thing that I've ever called. I mean, these are the greatest athletes in the world. When you combine size, speed, and strength, athleticism, and coordination, they're incredible. I mean, they're all 6'8", they're all 240 pounds, they're all chiseled, they're all so fast, they can all jump so high. I mean, it really is incredible, and all the while, a possession only lasts 24 seconds. So, it is a fast-moving sport. Soccer, and I've done baseball as well, done a lot of college baseball. Those games are different to do because they afford for a lot more time, a lot more conversation time, a lot more setting the scene and those types of things. But it's like everything else in life, man. I mean, anything that anybody does out there, anybody that's listening to this podcast right now, they're masters at what they do too. And it's an acquired skill. There's no question about it. So it is pretty seamless. A lot of it's based on the partners I get to work with, the crews I get to work with, and all that. So, I mean, again, I always get a lot of credit. I'm always quick to say this because I get a lot of credit for a lot of stuff that I don't have a lot to do with, especially on the television end. I work with professional TV guys. I work with professional camera guys. I work with professional radio people, and they're the best at what they do, too. They're not out in front of the camera. They're not behind the microphone. But their job that they do is just as important as what everybody else does to make things go. So it sounds easy and it seems easy, and the easier it seems is because the better that everybody else around me is at what they do also.
Yeah. Now, can you talk about the difference between television and radio? I mean, because obviously when you're calling a game that's on TV, the fans can watch it, so you don't really have to paint that picture. But on the radio, you kind of got to paint the picture for that fan that's listening. How different are those aspects?
Yeah, they're different. There's no question about it, because with radio I have to tell you what you see, and with television, as you said, I don't have to tell you what you see because you can see it. So I spend more of my time. I get a little more biographical on guys. I get a little more, I don't want to say nerdy or geeky, but the color commentator is a weapon I like to use in the television game, and I call college basketball with Dan Waterstrat on television. He's a former pro player that played overseas, played at Oakland, played at Rutgers as well, and I really like to get inside his head and see what's going on the floor from a technical perspective, because being honest with you, I can't watch what's going on around all that much because I have to watch the ball, see where the ball goes, see where the shots are. And I rely on Dan's expertise and his years of experience. I rely on him to be able to tell me why a play worked, because anybody that knows out there, anybody that's a basketball fan, a play works because of a screen that somebody sets or a cut somebody makes. It's not something that, even if you're watching on TV, you're able to notice all the time. And Dan, because he's been through it all and he's done it for a living, he knows the different steps that have to take place for a play to work. So I lean a little more on my color commentator during television to explain why things work. So, yeah, there's a feel to it. Again, it's cliche, but it's true. There was a process to it for me. I think it's interesting because you can tell a lot of the times guys that come up from radio and do television, especially earlier in their television careers, you can tell they're talking too much. And I'm sure I haven't gone back to my early television tapes, but if I went back and watched, I'm sure that I would be talking too much as well. I mean, it's natural because you come from the radio scene, you feel like you're never talking enough. But on TV, you have to learn the balance of letting the camera tell the story. You don't have to tell every story. That's why the camera's there. So I try to be a little bit more biographical about the players. I try to lean a little more on the color commentator as well to talk about why things happen. And also, too, my mentor in this business and one of my best friends in this business, Mario Mpemba, used to be the Tigers television announcer.
Oh, yeah.
He had a phrase when he was doing television. He'd say, "Let it breathe." And in television, you certainly have to let it breathe often. So that goes against the core, especially if you started doing radio. You're limited in terms of how you can let things breathe, but you get the feel for it after you do it long enough.
Yeah, I remember when Mario was there. I was actually a student there at the time. Have you talked to Mario recently? I know it was quite the fallout last year with the with him and Rod Allen. How is he doing? Are you staying in touch with Mario?
Yeah, we stay in contact all the time. You know, he's one of my good friends, as a matter of fact. I mean, throughout my process of, getting new jobs and talking with different production companies and talking with different networks and figuring out dynamics, he's always a guy that I lean on because he's been through it all before. And he's somebody I always will go look to him and seek his counsel. He's a valuable asset that I have in my life and a valuable asset that I have in my profession. And yes, we're good friends too. We stay in good contact. We like to go out to eat, go out to lunch, catch up with each other. If it's been a month maybe since we've talked, we'll always bumping back and forth text and funny stories that we've shared on the road together and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's somebody that, I've always found that it's a lot easier to pick the brain of people who have gone through stuff before you're about to go through it.
Yeah.
Because they give you perspective and they give you experience and knowledge. And, that's something that I'll always reach out to him for. And he's very valuable in that respect.
Yeah. Who are some other broadcasters that you've worked with that have really inspired you? And who are some guys that like the top guys, maybe like an Ernie Harwell or, George Kell, Al Kayla, some guys like that maybe you've kind of looked up to?
Yeah, it's funny being born and raised here in Detroit. I mean, I'm the cliche Detroit area story. Both my parents worked in car factories, producing car parts for different big three suppliers and all that kind of stuff. And my mom worked the midnight shift. My dad worked the day shift. And I'm your prototypical, late 80s, early 90s suburban Detroit story. And, I grew up as a kid, and I actually got the chance to tell George Blaha this one time, running into him over at the Palace and dealing with the Pistons and stuff like that. As a kid, I always listened to the games on the radio at night because back then you only got. I always laugh at my sons because they always talk about what team they want to watch, and we turn the game on. Whatever team in whatever sport, anywhere in the world, we just turn the game on, and they can't wrap their head around the fact that back when I was their age or a really young kid, you only got 25 games on television, 25 Tiger games on television, or 30 Tiger games on television. So the radio every night, the radio was the way to stay in and stay up with what was going on with the Tigers and the Pistons and the Red Wings and the Lions, because the Lions weren't very good back in those days. So their games were always blacked out.
Yeah.
So I would listen to Mark Champion through the radio. And, that was something as a kid. I got the opportunity to tell George Blaha later in life. I said, George, if my parents knew how often I stayed up when they thought I was asleep, listening to you with the radio under the pillow or the radio up just loud enough that I could hear it, I would have gotten a lot of trouble. And George Blaha, being the class guy he is, he's like, well, Neal, I won't tell your parents when I see them. So I got a good laugh out of that. But that my broadcasting style. Because, look, let's be real, man. There's nothing original in the world left. Every single thing has been thought of at some point. So, I mean, my broadcasting style is a product of what I've been exposed to, like every other walk of life. And my broadcast style, you'll hear a lot of George Blaha in there, and some Ernie Harwell and some Mark Champion and some Mario Mpemba, and all those things kind of mixed up, and I just pick and choose a little bit of everything that they did and mix it all up into one, and that kind of becomes my style. And also, I encourage this a lot when I talk to young broadcasters that want me to listen to their clips and things like that. I tell them, I say, yes, you have to work some elements into your broadcast, but what will make you a good broadcaster is your personality. your personality will make you a good broadcaster. And I'm not the most polished speaker. I'm not the most polished broadcaster. I'm not one of these guys that went to Syracuse School of Broadcasting. And I always tell, I have a lot of friends out there that went to Syracuse Broadcasting School, which is, really the mecca for sports broadcasters out there. And I always joke with them, and I always say, how can you tell a Syracuse broadcasting graduate? And I would say, you don't have to tell them. They'll tell you. So, I mean, like that, I'm not the most polished person. So I like to think what makes me popular with people that listen to me is I'm real. Like, I'm authentic. The way that I'm calling a game is the same way if you and I were sitting on a bar stool at one of the local establishments having some drinks. That's the same way I would be talking about that game if you and I were watching it together on television. And that was something that I really forged as a kid, shooting baskets in the driveway in the backyard as a kid, kind of not purposely narrating my own play-by-play of what we were doing, but, as a kid, you start doing the TV broadcaster angle to it, you do the countdown and shoot the shot and all that stuff. That's something I've been doing for as long as I remember, where I want to interject my personality into it as well, because I like to think that I'm a pretty likable guy, and I like people, and I like the same things most people like. And I use that to my advantage when I'm calling games, because it's me. It's me calling the game. It's not some show I'm putting on for people. And I mean, am I putting on a show for people? Yes. Do I want people to be entertained? Yes. And there's a very fine line between entertaining people and making it a clown show. But, at the same time, I want it to be genuine. So I really feel like I'm genuine when I'm out there. When I started in all this, I tried to emulate that quote-unquote polished broadcaster, and it was fake, man. It really was. It was fake. So I always tell the young broadcasters, just be you, because that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to make your style is you. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to last in this business.
Yeah. So what's the goal for you? Like I said, you got a lot of on your plate, but there's always room to grow in this business, but it's super competitive. It's really, I don't want to say it's hard to break into, but it's hard to rise to that level of, like a Joe Buck or to get to that top notch. Where do you see your career rising as you venture through this business?
Well, it's always been my goal to get to the NBA. That's really what I'm keeping my eye on now. When the Charlotte Hornets had a spot open on their radio crew, I had some brief discussions with their organization about it. As you talked about, I fill in for Mark Champion on the Pistons radio network. I filled in for Chuck Swirsky for the Chicago Bulls as well, and that's really my goal. That's where I'm trying to get to. I mean, certainly would I welcome national opportunities? Yes, I do national broadcast now for the USL, for ESPN Plus. So I have that in my toolbox. I am capable of calling games in more of a national style. But the NBA is really where I want to be. I would love to be with the Detroit Pistons at some point in time. That's the long-term goal. That's the long-term dream, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And I really love the fact that I've been able to accomplish that dream on a couple of occasions and been around some of the best players in the NBA. I mean, I've called Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, NBA All-Stars. And I've been in the building calling the games for the radio networks. It's been purely incredible. But long-term, that is my goal, to get to the NBA, and we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, certainly, again, I would welcome the opportunity to do some national stuff, and I have always had some stuff in the works. But the bottom line is this is a relationships-driven business. And, again, for the youngsters that might be listening, or people that want to give this thing a go, your memorizing stats and all that stuff is nowhere near as important as the networks that you maintain and the friendships that you've built through this, through your experiences and through the opportunities that you've gotten. So that's the number one thing that I always tell people. But yeah, man, I mean, that's the goal. And I always break it down like this, and it actually sounds absurd when you say it this way. Certainly when I started in this business as well. If you think about it, there's 12 active players playing in an NBA game. Probably 15 on a roster. There's 30-plus teams in the NBA. So just for math's sake, say there's 30. So there's 450 players in the NBA. There's only 30 broadcasters. So, I mean, by rationale, it's more than 10 times easier to make the NBA as a player as it is as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Which is stupid to say it that. I mean, think about that. That's a crazy stat. But also, at the same time, I've been there a couple times. Like, I've made it. So, I've gotten a taste of it. It tastes good, and I want some more. And that's my long-term goal. That's where I want to be. I'd love for it to be with my hometown team that I spent nights listening to, at night when I was supposed to be asleep. And I remember just how excited I'd be throughout the course of a day. Like if it was a Friday night or a Saturday night, if the Pistons or the Tigers or someone was playing a West Coast game out in California, if they were playing Los Angeles, and they were going to be on the radio at 10 or 10:30. And I remember how excited I would be because I knew I was going to stay up late and listen to the game. And I'd always fall asleep, by like the fourth inning or halfway through the second quarter. But just that excitement every single day of knowing that night I was going to get to listen to him play on the West Coast, it was great. And that's something that's always followed me.
Yeah. When you did get a chance to fill in for the Pistons, how did you control the nerves and control like the fact that you're a fan and like you're getting a shot at this? How did you control those nerves and stay professional about it?
It was hard, man. I'm not going to lie, because I remember that with great detail. I got the call to fill in for a preseason game, I think in 2015 at Washington. They were playing the Wizards when they had Paul Pierce and John Wall and all those guys. And I got the call and traveled with the team and all that stuff. And I remember getting to the hotel, and I checked in. I got into my room, and I'm sitting there, and I open up my envelope, because what you do when you walk in the hotel, they have a table with all the envelopes set up, and there's your room keys in there with a travel itinerary when the buses leave to go to the arena, all that kind of stuff, and your press credentials in there. And I remember I got to the room, and I sat down on the bed, and I opened up that envelope, and there was a Washington Wizards press credential with the NBA logo on it. It had my name on it, and I'm looking out the hotel window, and the Washington Monument's across the street. And, certainly, we're at a very nice hotel, and I called my wife, and I was like, I can't believe that I've made it here. Like, I've made it, and it was a long road. I delivered pizza, so I was 30 years old to stay flexible enough to continue to call games and get the opportunities to call games and work in media and all those types of things. I mean, I had a wife and kid at home, and I'm out delivering pizza, dude. So, I mean, think about that. Think about that reality check. And in that moment, you get a lot of emotions going through your body, because in that moment it paid off. And to answer your question, how do you handle the nerves? I was terrified. I won't lie about that. I was terrified, man. I was terrified being on that plane, flying into Washington with the Detroit Pistons team on it. And you know the accomplishments that those players have, and they're the very best in the world at what they do, and the best coaches, and one of the best basketball organizations in the world. And you're doing it in the top 15 media market on the team's flagship radio station, and you just want to blend in so bad. You don't want to make any mistakes at all. I mean, and think about that too. As you sit there throughout the night in your hotel room, and you keep thinking about this, right? Like, you can't have any mistakes, and the pressure gets greater and greater. And then the next day, just sitting there looking at the clock, waiting till it was time to go, and then getting on the bus and driving over to the arena. And, there's a lot of things that go into doing radio in the NBA that don't apply for, doing it for a mid-major college team, where, you have a production crew on site that handles all the equipment. You literally just walk in, put the headset on, and call the game, and that's it. So, I mean, I'm sitting there, and I'm going to call the game with Rick Mahorn. Here's NBA, Detroit Pistons, Bad Boys, world champion. And Rick is a guy that I've gotten to know over the years, and he will bust your chops, man. I mean, there's no relent with him, man. He will give it to you and give it to you and give it to you and just bust your chops constantly. And it's in good fun, because that's Rick. That's what Rick does. And we get we get ready to go on the air, and I was terrified, man. And I hear the producer in my ear counting down, so we're going on, 5, 4, 3. I think about my family, and I think about the fact, my last thought that went through my head was, you're here for a reason. You're here because you're good at what you do. Now go show everybody how good you are. And then you go. And then it all left. Like all the nerves left because I had done this 100 times before. It was no different. And that's the thing that really helped me, I think, advance in my career to be able to get to TV was because I'm able to it's showtime, man. It's time to go. When you push everything out of your mind and you try to dominate the broadcast. And that's really how I look at it. And that's what happened in that spot. I forgot I was in the NBA and on the Pistons flagship and calling the game with Rick Mahorn. I was just calling a game. The same game that I called when I did Horizon League baseball, or I did college soccer or whatever. I called the game the exact same way. I'm excited about it the exact same way because my parents worked in car factories their whole life, man. That's something that I always thought about every time before I go on the air. I think about my family. I think about my parents working in that car factory, man. And that's why you can kind of tell the way that my tone of voice changed right now when I'm talking about it because it's real, man. And I bring that energy to do what I do every single game. I don't care if it's Detroit City in front of thousands of fans, if it's the Pistons, if it's a high school. My alma mater, Fraser High School, had me back to do PA one time for the homecoming football game. Did it the exact same way I call a Pistons game because I'm excited to be there because my parents worked in car factories every day.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned Detroit City Football Club, and I want to touch on this for a bit because this is a faction of the Detroit sports scene that is really on the rise, and I think there's a lot of people that are really excited, and the atmosphere at the games it's incredible. There's a fan base that's just that's really like electric right now. And soccer I think is a sport in Metro Detroit that the youth programs are really big, but the pro scene we don't have a pro team. I personally think a pro team would thrive, and like a major league soccer team. And so with Detroit City FC, I think you're seeing that there really is a love for soccer in Detroit, and this team is really starting to thrive. Can you talk about from your perspective, the rise of this team and like what the future holds for Detroit City FC?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with that is there's a lot of factors in play as far as the success for Detroit City FC goes, and I've seen it. I've been around that program now for 5 years, and their ascension from playing at Cass Tech and into Keyworth down in Hamtramck. And what's amazing about that is when I first started calling the games down at Cass Tech, through a clouded press box window that you could barely see out of, and they would sell the games out with like 1,500 people, and they had to turn people away, and people would be in the streets, kind of standing up on a curb trying to watch into the stadium, and just the continued ascension of that, that team has been incredible, and there's a lot of factors at play for that, and it's a multifaceted answer as to why Detroit City FC has turned into what it's turned into, and the bottom line with all of it is the reason it's so successful is because it's organic. It's not chemically made. I mean, it's not bought. What they've been able to do, the Northern Guard supporter section, they support the community they live in. That's why that's at the base of a lot of things at Detroit City FC. It truly is community based, and when you see that's what there are roots with Detroit City FC that are in line with the soccer teams that you see over in Europe, and that's why I think it's so successful here. And you talk about pro with Detroit City FC. They've moved into that pro stratosphere now with being in the NISA league, and certainly it's disappointing those games have fell victim to the whole coronavirus pandemic as all sports have, because it has thrown some water on some of the momentum that they've created. But they will be back, and the Northern Guard will be back strong, and there'll be 6,000-7,000 people. I mean, it is pro soccer.
Yeah.
And I always laugh when people say, and I'm not disparaging you. I mean, it's something where when people say, well, why can't there be like a pro soccer representation because the city seems hungry for soccer? Soccer is doing just fine in the city. Go to Keyworth and see 7,000-8,000 people there in the stand, and everybody doing chants and letting off the smoke bombs. That is the most authentic sport team in America. One of the most authentic sport teams in America. The college football scene, all of that. That stuff's right. Detroit City FC is right on par with all that. I see it every day. Every day I go down there for a match, to call a match. I see it. They have the local television deal now. I mean, they're doing all those things, and all of it's 100% organic, and they win. The bottom line is, too, they win. You just have to look at the record books for the success that they've had. And they've grown this thing organically. Like I said, there's roots, man. There's deep roots, deeper than maybe the casual Detroit sports fan recognizes. And for whatever reason, if they don't know about it, if you're a sports fan in the city, you owe it to being a sports fan in the city to familiarize yourself with what they have going on. You need to be out there. And that's really where I've been lucky with what I do, because I was in this at really the ground level, especially as far as broadcast goes with Detroit City FC. And I'm really fortunate to be the voice of Detroit City FC, to be the voice of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, because I see a lot of parallels with what both of those organizations do. I mean, the Golden Grizzlies, they're getting around 3,000 people a game in the arena as well.
Yeah.
There's an organic feel to what's going on, and both of them have the local network television deals, and people are able to watch it now from a distance. And that's something where I feel as though, maybe the mainstream sports fan doesn't really recognize what's going on in both of those places, but I think that they owe it to themselves, and they owe it to being a Detroit sports fan to find out about it, to get involved with it. Because, I talked about how that's a multifaceted answer with Detroit City FC. Soccer as a whole, man, it's primed to do well for a couple of reasons. And I think one of the main reasons, I think that soccer is in a position where we're seeing television ratings continue to rise, interest continue to rise. It's a lot like NCAA women's softball. You're seeing NCAA softball, the television ratings rise for that, especially around College World Series time. Soccer's 90 minutes and it's over. No matter what happens, man, in your life, you go to a soccer match, it's 90 minutes plus 15 minutes of stoppage for halftime, maybe a couple minutes of stoppage time, and then it's over. You know that going in. You can plan your day around that.
Yeah.
And in an era where people have never worked more, hours I'm talking about, have never been away from their homes more, free time and discretionary time becomes more and more valuable because we have less and less of it. So I think people are choosing to devote their time to a sport where they know 2 hours and out, and then you can go about your day, and you can go do the pregame festivities and have the drinks and all that stuff and have fun, and then go on about your day. So I think there's a multitude of reasons why soccer especially is a sport where you're going to see the foothold, the grass that it has continue to grow.
Yeah. Now, last year there was talks. The MLS was expanding, and there was talks about Detroit getting a team, and possibly Detroit City FC kind of like moving up and being that MLS franchise. There was a lot of different talk. Even that site, the old jail down there, was going to be knocked down. I think Dan Gilbert was trying to get involved. But I was hearing a lot of backlash from Detroit City FC fans that they really don't want that. They don't want that rise to the MLS because, like you said, they want to keep things organic. They want to keep it their own. Do you think it would be a good move for Detroit City FC to rise to that level if the opportunity comes, or should they stay separate and stay their own thing?
I mean, that because I get that question a lot, and that's something really that I don't, I'm not at that pay grade. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not that high on the ladder to know the financials, because really life seems to always come down to the money, right? And especially on the sports side. And yeah, you're talking about a multitude of factors there. And I'm not a part of those discussions. Wasn't a part of those discussions. I read the same newspaper stories that you read, that all the fans read, and all those kinds of things. And all I know is this: is when you look at what Detroit City FC has done, continues to do, that they're getting along just fine. And from a revenue perspective, I don't know how with those kinds of moves, how that would impact anything that goes on. All I know is when I show up to Keyworth, there's 7,000-8,000 people strong, and they're locked in and they're engaged, and they live and die with the success of their club. All I know is when I broadcast a game, there's 25,000 people watching all around the world in 20-plus different countries all around the world. That's all I know. That's what I know is fact. That's what I can speak to. So, again, the short answer to the question is I think they're doing just fine, and it will continue to grow, and you'll see it continue to grow. And the sky's the limit. I don't know how a dynamic like that would work out. I don't pretend to. All I know is that everything's fine going off of the numbers that I see.
Yeah. I want to switch it up here. As a broadcaster, what are some of your highlights? Some of the, can you pinpoint a couple crazy buzzer beater finishes? What are some of your real highlights that really stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of those. I've had a couple of viral endings, especially with Oakland basketball.
Yeah.
We had a buzzer beater one time that we had a guy that played for us, Duke Monday, made a 3-point shot at the buzzer to win a game at the arena over UIC at Illinois Chicago, I think it was. And it was pretty cool not only to be a part of that moment, to see the fans storm the court because of the emotion that was involved. It was pretty cool too. They cut into Michigan was playing Michigan State later on that day on ESPN, the national broadcast. And they cut into that to show the highlight of Oakland making the shot. And that was really cool to see your call be on SportsCenter. And we had Kay Felder, just an electric player playing in the Chinese League, played 3 seasons in the NBA as well. Just some of the things he did to people out there on the floor to have your call be number 1 on SportsCenter Top 10. Those were always pretty cool moments also. But for me, it's been more about, I guess, you talk about moments, I would call it experiences. I went to 2 NCAA tournaments. I called 2 NCAA tournament games, and to be a part of that, the police escort on the ride over to the arena, and one year in particular playing, Golden Grizzlies playing against Texas, where we had an NBA guy, Keith Benson, on that team, and Texas had 3 NBA guys, with Tristan Thompson leading the way on that team, and the game was an epic game that went back and forth, and Texas ended up winning by 4 points. But to be a part of the NCAA tournament, to be the underdog, making the push against Texas, and you have a full arena, and the fans that are fans of the other teams that are playing, not Texas, to hear them all kind of get on Oakland's side just to see the upset.
Yeah.
And to, when you're watching it at home, you can't help but get caught up in it. It doesn't matter what school it is. If it's Georgia State beating Baylor or whatever, you as the common sports fan, you're watching these games and you get hyped. You want to see the upset happen. I know growing up, watching the NCAA tournament, that's something that I always live for, was that moment when the underdog would get the win over the heavy favorite. To be a part of that and to feel that energy and to be calling that game on radio, to just be a part of it and feel it in person, that's something I'll never forget. And then we talked about my first game in the NBA as well. I got called to do the game in Oklahoma City when Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were playing the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Pistons. That was cool to be able to call one of the greatest NBA basketball players of all time, to see what he did on that court. Because I've always laughed when people would talk about an NBA player and go, wow, that guy sucked. I would always say, really? That guy would walk into any NCAA Division I game and dominate. Any NCAA Division I game he gets in, he would dominate that basketball game. These are the top 400 players in the world, period, end of story. And to watch, knowing that going in, and to watch Kevin Durant on the floor, bring the ball up the floor at 6'10", and pull up from 20 feet, and you know the jump shot's going in the same way he knows it's going in. I mean, he did things for his size out on the floor. I still can't believe I saw. And I've never gotten a chance to call LeBron James, but I would imagine it's probably the same way in person. To see the highest level of the game of basketball. And I remember going to a commercial break and taking it in and talking to Rick Mahorn and go, what do you do with that guy? I mean, what can you do? And he looks over and he goes, there's nothing you can do. That's Michael Jordan out there. I mean, you just hope they miss. And it was surreal to hear an NBA champion say, sometimes you just hope they miss. Yeah. And that, just to be in awe of the greatness that you're seeing out there, that's more the moments I remember, is being around that, being able to call just the best of the best, the highest level.
Yeah. It's funny with Mahorn, because all he would do is beat the heck out of him like they did Jordan, but the game's different now. So.
But still, though, I mean, the moral of the story is, with Michael Jordan, LeBron, you just hope they miss.
Yeah.
You can't stop them.
Yeah. How has I hear a lot. I talk to a lot of sports journalists, and a lot of times for these guys, it becomes they become less of a fan, and it becomes more of a job. And I think with the sports writer, it might be a bit different because it's just such more of a grind. Where, I mean, with the sports broadcasting, have you found yourself more of it just being a job and less being a sports fan as the years go by? Or is that love for sports as a fan still there as strong as it ever was for you?
No, I mean, for me, it's still the same as it's always been. I mean, being a fan, and I have to check that stuff at the door, especially doing national games, because I don't really have quote-unquote a rooting interest in that game. What I have found in those scenarios is I'm rooting for the storyline. I'm rooting for the best storyline because I want the broadcast to be as compelling as possible. And if the best storyline's playing out, then the broadcast is as compelling as possible. Now, certainly I don't have control over that as to what comes through on the broadcast, how the game plays out. But I've always been a guy, I don't watch movies. This is the first time I've ever watched shows, really, in my whole life, outside of The Simpsons and The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Those are the only, and Family Guy. Those are the only shows that I ever really watched. I would sit down and watch an episode of. I've gotten into Ozark now.
Oh, it's a great one.
No spoilers, man. I've just started the third season, so.
Oh, you're a good man.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. It's great entertainment, man. It's a great show.
It is. It is. It's a great show, and I should have it wrapped up, I'm guessing, by the end of next week. But with all that being said, I mean, I'm still a sports guy. When I'm at home on the summer, and during the summer, and I got a couple days off, I have a TV mount installed out on my deck. I'll put the TV out there, and I'll throw some logs on a fire, and I'll have a glass of bourbon or whatever, and I'm turning on the baseball game. And I'm watching a baseball game, or I'm watching a soccer match, and that's what I do. And I'm not watching it because I'm not one of these people that'll sit there and critique the broadcast or say what I would do. No, I'm there to be entertained, man, and that's why I've always been such a big boxing fan and horse racing fan, because I've never had to work in those arenas, and it's something where I can just check out and be a sports fan of.
Yeah.
And I don't have to know, I don't have to overly know a whole bunch of technical aspects to the sport. I just watch it the same way you watch it, or the same way anybody else watches it, and I'm entertained by it. I still enjoy that. I still love that. I still love getting lost in a game. Or if it's not a good game, I'll flip to another game on, and I'll watch a different game and kind of fall into that one. So, it's one of those things too with the amount of travel I do, and I think you find this with sports writers, and you find this with play-by-play people and sideline reporters, is the amount of travel and just how deep into it we are, especially when you travel for a living and travel with a team. You don't necessarily get that time to be so passionate about being a fan, because I have kids. I have 3 kids. I have a wife, all that. So I still have to make up for that time that I missed when I'm on the road. So I have to get really deeply involved with what they have going on. So So I don't really have that discretionary time till later on at night where the kids go to bed, maybe watching TV for an hour or whatever. That's kind of where I get back into it. But no, man, I mean, yes, I don't get the opportunity to be as passionate. I've found that hockey is a sport that, because it goes on during college basketball season, that's the one that kind of gets squeezed out for me. And I like hockey. I grew up as a Red Wings fan. Sergei Fedorov, one of my favorite athletes of all time. But I don't have the time to devote to keeping up with hockey. By the time you keep up with college basketball and my team that I'm covering and kind of keeping up from a distance with what's going on with the Pistons in case I'm ever pressed into duty there, hockey's the one that suffers. So I do miss out in that respect. But, at the same time, it is still my entertainment and always will be.
Yeah. When you're broadcasting college athletes versus pro athletes, you get, when you're calling the game, you got to call what you see, but can you be more critical of pro athletes? Or, I mean, as far as college, because I guess what I'm saying is there's such big money, and when you're watching games on TV of college athletes, you forget that they're 18 to 20-year-old kids out there that aren't getting paid for this. But it's so easy to get wrapped up in, oh my God, he just missed an easy layup, how do you venture around the fact that people are watching this game and they want them to win, but they're going to make mistakes and they're just kids, versus when they're pros, they're getting paid millions of dollars and they should be expected to handle this type of criticism?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of treat them both the same because the bottom line is, I never forget who I'm working for. And in and above that, especially with Oakland, like I said, I travel with this team, man. We fly on the planes. I'm at the practices. I eat meals with them. I've eaten Thanksgiving dinner with the Oakland Golden Grizzlies men's basketball team more than I've ate it with my own family over the course of the last decade. I mean, you, especially at that level, I mean, you're involved.
Yeah.
And you're deep in with the team that you cover. So I mean, at the same time, I mean, when you're watching the game on TV, you know what happened. I mean, you know that they made a mistake. I mean, I will point out the fact that I've always handled it like this. And this is a great example and a story I like to tell. One year, working for Oakland, we played in a tournament in Chicago. And it was over Thanksgiving. And we had the early game in the tournament. We were playing Southern University. And we were playing at 11 a.m. in Chicago at the Sears Center. And needless to say, it's 11 a.m. game the day after Thanksgiving. There wasn't a ton of people in the building. And you could hear my broadcast like out onto the floor, or you could hear it on the benches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Oakland beat Southern pretty handily in the game. I think they beat them by like 40 points or something like that. We had a really good team that year. And we had Drew Valentine on that team.
Yeah.
The older brother, Denzel Valentine.
Denzel, yeah.
Bulls, and Drew's on the coaching staff at Loyola Chicago. They went to the Final Four a couple years ago against Michigan. He was on the coaching staff. But Drew had like a point-blank layup, and he missed it. I mean, he was literally standing under the basket all by himself, and he missed it. And I said something along the lines of, Drew Valentine all alone on the block and couldn't get it to go. I think Drew Valentine will be the first person to tell you he should make that shot. And Drew turned around, and as he was running back down the floor, he heard me say that. And he runs down, and he goes, "Come on, Neal, don't do me like that, dog." And he ran down, and you could hear it because my crowd mic was right there, and you could hear it. And, that's kind of that's the way that I went in terms of being critical. Drew Valentine knows he should have made that shot. He doesn't need to be chastised by me or by you. He's made that shot. I've watched him make that shot 100 times in practice. Hours and hours he spent in. He's human, man. He's going to make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes in my life that a camera wasn't on, thankfully. And that's the way I would always choose to handle those types of things. I have to point it out because it's in front of you and we all saw it, especially on radio. You didn't see it. I have to tell you how it happened. But at the same time, it's not something I'm going to dwell on, man. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me. B, I know these guys, and C, I'm working for these organizations. So why would I, I always laugh at people that are critical of announcers on TV, especially guys that are employed by the team, and they say, oh, he's never critical enough of the team. I don't see you walking into your office, saying something in the public domain, like being on the speaker at work, saying, "Boy, our boss really messed this one up." I don't see you saying that, in a public forum.
Yep.
Why aren't you critical of your boss? He made a mistake, because you don't do that. That's why I hate to shed the light on the dirty little secret, but I just don't do things that you wouldn't do at your job. I guess that's the best way I can answer it.
Yeah. Oh man, Neal. Two of my favorite Grizzlies were Jonathan Jones and you had mentioned Kay Felder. Who was the better point guard? Can you compare? Because I think those are the two best in at least the last 10 years, that I know. And you got to cover and watch both of them play. Can you compare the two?
Yeah, their skill set was different, and I think what their role was different too. I would say that Jonathan Jones was more of a Tom Brady type point guard, and Kay Felder was more of a Steve Young in later years, Mike Vick style point guard. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
Like JJ was a guy that ran the offense and executed the offense. He was a capable scorer, don't get me wrong. I saw him walk into Oregon and give the Oregon Ducks, I think, like around 30 points or something like that in a game. He was a capable scorer, but that wasn't, the situation didn't call for that with the teams that Jonathan Jones was running, as opposed to Kay Felder, who was just so dynamic of a player. And his skill set and his athleticism were so off the chart, and the vertical and all that type of stuff. The human highlight reel just waiting to happen. Yes, they played the same position, and yes, the goals are the same. But the term, in terms of what they were responsible for, I think was different. And it depends on what you're shopping for to answer that question. You're more tried and true point guard. I think that was more Jonathan Jones, but you're more dynamic. Put the team on my back, as we saw Kay Felder do against Michigan State at that game at the Palace, which it is one of the greatest college basketball games of all time.
Yeah.
And to this day was the largest crowd for college basketball in the history of the Palace of Auburn Hills. So that, all the lore was there as well. So I guess it depends on what you're shopping for. I know this. That's always been the story for Oakland. They've had that point guard that they tossed the keys to and said, hey, run the team. And those guys were two of the best to ever do it.
And when you got a chance to cover one of the best shooters, I think, pure shooters, and you remember Kangas, man.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some memories about him? Because that kid, man, he could shoot the lights out. He would hit some of those shots where you wouldn't believe it, just ice in his veins and just nail those shots. He's got to be one of the top guys that you've seen for Oakland, right?
Oh yeah. Eric Kangas, obviously Travis Bader was the all-time three-point leader for a long time as well. Max Hooper, the guy that only shot three-point shots. I've been lucky to see a lot of great shooters. That's something that Oakland's offense is always profiling. That great shooter. Well, Eric Kangas, man, you talk about a guy too that he was gifted in shooting the basketball, and he didn't really talk a lot. He didn't really need to say a lot. And then Travis, that morphed into Travis Bader, who was the best to ever do it, the best three-point shooter in my mind of all time. I know somebody made more, but I saw Travis Bader's entire career. I was around for his entire career, and just his story of how he got to start his first game, and the whole game plan was for him to only play 5 minutes, and he made 3 threes in the first 6-7 minutes of the game at West Virginia, and he never came out after that his whole career. So you move into Max Hooper as well. And Oakland's always had that, man. That's the lineage of the Golden Grizzlies. That shooter, that point guards and shooters, man, and scoring a lot of points. They're fun to be around.
Yeah. And now this team, the Grizzlies, they've had their moments. Like you said, they've been to a couple tournaments. Almost got there last year. They got knocked out by Northern Kentucky on that buzzer beat. I was actually covering that game myself for a website, and man, like that tournament was phenomenal. And I just like the Grizzlies. They're just this fringe team where if they get the right players, the right mix, and Greg Campy, he's such a great coach. But they're just not able to take that like step up because they're competing so much with, you got Michigan, you got Michigan State, you got the Eastern, Western, Central, so there's a lot of competition to get players locally, and then Oakland, they don't have that. While they do get players from around the country, they just don't have that huge reach, where you're getting, these, 4A and 5A type stars. But is Oakland always just going to be one of those fringe teams, or is there a direction that they can go where the school can be on the right? Because the school itself, Oakland, is a growing school. Buildings are popping up every year. More and more students are coming onto campus every year. And then there are professional athletes that are coming out of not just the basketball program, but throughout all the sports. So do you think Oakland is a school that is really on the rise, or are they always going to be a mid-major?
Well, that's mid-major basketball works a little bit differently, than your traditional Power 5, where at the mid-major level, you're trying to get a core in, and you develop that core, and you try to have that 2-year run where everybody kind of comes together and you make your move. And that was something when the Golden Grizzlies went to the tournament in 2010, 2011, that was what they had. Now, certainly, you have an NBA centerpiece to all of it, like Keith Benson.
Yeah.
And that Golden Grizzlies core that went to those back-to-back tournaments, they had, I think, 7 pros on that team. That's crazy to think of. Name me another mid-major that has 7 pros on it. And even when you go back to 2005, you had Raul Marshall, who played in the NBA for a couple of seasons, and Courtney Scott played pro overseas. And then, you moved into that. Oakland's been to 3 of the last 15 NCAA tournaments. So that's a resume a lot of schools certainly would line up for if they were able to have those types of accomplishments. There's a long answer, I guess, to that question, and we're in a very different time in college basketball where you look at the transfer portal and you see what's going on there. This transfer portal is really going to hurt mid-major sports. And Oakland's gotten a good look at it. The men's soccer program with Eric Pogue, they lost two MLS draft picks from last year. Before the season, they transferred out. Niall Diggs went to Syracuse. Nash Popovic went to Michigan. Those were MLS draft pick caliber players. And the transfer portal really has changed a lot. And mid-major schools now, they're going to be, I guess this won't be a popular term, but to some degree, they're going to be quote-unquote developmental franchises for some of the Power Fives, because that's the way that the transfer rules are proportioned right now. And look, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not paid to know what the answer is. But all I know is Greg Campy, the staff at Oakland, the staff at all the sports, they realize what's going on. It's not like their heads are stuck in the sand. They don't know what's happening. They know what's going on. So they'll have to adjust and pick out what angle of that they can use to their favor. And they certainly will. As you talked about, Greg Campy's used the transfer route before. We've had great transfers that have come in. Raul Marshall was one of them. He went to the NBA. Reggie Hamilton finished second, led the nation in scoring one year, beat out some guy named Damian Lillard for the scoring title back in 2013.
Yeah.
So, it's like I talked about. They've had statistical champions everywhere. Reggie Hamilton was another transfer as well. He's used it to his advantage before. He'll figure out a way.
Yeah. Speaking of Greg Campy, what is it like to work with him? He's been 30 plus years now as a coach of OU, I think it is. Think about all the work that he's put in, and just seeing like the the way this school has come up through the years, and there's been times I know there's been times where he almost got straight away. I think Cincinnati was one. I think he almost took that job when a few years ago, or at least thinking his name was mentioned in it. But for a guy like Coach Campy to put in decades like this, how remarkable is that in this day and age of win or else?
Well, it means you win, and there's no or else. So, like that's been the way to survive. I mean, it's no secret, the longevity in coaching and sports. If you want to be a coach for a long time, you better win a lot of games. That's it. That is the secret. That's what it comes down to. So, as far as Campy goes, he's won a lot. That's why he's been around. We talked about 3 last 15 NCAA tournaments and conference championships and taking a team from Division II to Division I, putting guys in the NBA. We didn't even talk about Kendrick Nunn.
Yeah.
Who's going to get votes for Rookie of the Year and be mentioned in the same breath with John Morant, Zion Williamson. I mean, he's doing his thing as well. So that's really it. Get good, and he'll be the first one to tell you, I get good players. That's why we play good games. That's why we win. I have good players. So if you want to be a coach, you want to be successful, you want to stick around, win.
And from my perspective, when I've got to talk, he's been nothing but kind, nothing but respectful, answers every question. How has your relationship with Coach Campy been throughout the years?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, for somebody in my line of work, that's who you want, because he makes the job very easy. We do his weekly radio show from RJ's Pub in Rochester Hills.
Yeah.
And that's easy. I just tee him up, and he lets it go. And he's great, because a lot of coaches don't have a lot to say or don't want to talk a lot. Coach Campy has opinions on stuff, and he'll say it. That's why I would venture a guess his radio show is one of the more listened to coaches' radio shows, just because it's entertaining, because he's going to say some things and have opinions on things. And that's the other luxury 36 years in the game provides you. You've seen it all, so you've encountered everything, and there's some security in that as well. So he's a guy, he can talk a little bit more than most coaches probably would be comfortable doing so. So it's easy, man. On my end, it's really easy dealing with him. I've come to find out, actually it might have hurt me a little bit, in that I always thought, hey, every coach is like this. And come to find out, I do, when I'm doing national soccer games for ESPN Plus, and I have these little conference calls set up with some of the coaches, they're not all as willing to discuss things as Greg Campy is. Yeah,
I bet. All right, I could talk with you all day, Neal. You got a lot of great stuff to say, but the one thing that you got going right now that I want to touch on is I think it's bringing a lot of people some entertainment, and I think you are very entertained by it, is the one thing that you can actually comment on right now, and that your broadcast is mail time, and for those that don't know, I would love for you to kind of talk about how mail time came about, and you're getting some shine for this. There was a story in the news about it, and there's a lot of interaction on social media. So if you could just touch on what mail time is all about.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, man. When this whole quarantine thing started, I found that going to get my mail had become a highlight of the day. And I almost kind of equated, for the people that have seen Goodfellas, the scene in Goodfellas where Ray Liotta character is talking about, he says dinner in prison is a big deal. And they talked about all the stuff they go through to get dinner ready when they're in jail. Yeah. And that was kind of like mail for me. I get to go walk out to the mailbox, get excited about what's in there, get disappointed if there's bills in there. There's a great advertisement, get to flip through that advertisement. And I said, you know what? I saw a couple of these sports announcers that were doing play-by-play stuff around the house. I said, hey, that's pretty entertaining. I'm going to put my own kind of spin on this, because I think I told you earlier, like I kind of identify with every person, in that a lot of the stuff other people like, I probably like. And I thought, this would be pretty funny, if I go out there and do this and kind of give the blow by blow where people can kind of hang on what's coming in my mailbox today. And it really struck a chord with a lot of people, especially during this quarantine thing.
Yeah.
And the first day I did it, I got, I want to say like almost 2,000 views just on Twitter alone of people watching me get my mail.
Yeah.
And, but hundreds more on Facebook, hundreds more on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then Tony Paul saw it and wrote a story about it for the Detroit News. And I think that first video got, I think it's pushing 10,000 views of me getting my mail. And I've got since then it's kind of leveled off a little bit, but I get anywhere from 600 to 1,000 people that watch me get my mail every day. And, it's one of those things where I try to keep it entertaining and maybe go a little bit over the top and clown show it up a little bit. But, the same things that I like, the same things that I find, exciting in my mailbox are probably the same things you find exciting in your mailbox. And the same things that are disappointing for me are disappointing for you and vice versa. When you get bills, it sucks.
I gotta say, Neal, man, that one where you got the bill, I'm sorry, man. I was laughing at your pain on that one. That's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's like, oh, this is not looking good.
The mortgage came in, the MasterCard bill came in, the Home Depot washer and dryer payment came in.
Oh,
it was grim, man. That was the grimmest day of all the mail time, and then you parlay in, you mix it with the weather and all that stuff. So it's one of those things where it's stuff that every person can relate to because they do it in their lives. So, and I've had, obviously, as you guys have seen, I mean, people, and I always laugh too because people ask me, they're like, wow, like everyone sees your address and stuff like that. I would respond to them and say, I can get your address in 3 clicks. And I'll send them a screenshot of me getting their address. If you want to find out where I live, you can find out where I live.
Yeah.
It's not. I can find out where you live. I mean, it's not that hard, dude. It's all a matter of public record. So I don't care, man. And so people are sending me stuff in the mail now, and it's really grown onto a life of its own, and it's fun. And I feel, Tom, you'll laugh at this, man. But, when I hang up with you, I'm going to go out and get the mail.
Yeah.
And I feel a sense. It's helped me. Everyone says, oh, it gives me something to watch on social media, even if it's only for 2 minutes of my day. Thank you for doing it. It's helped me because through all this, I don't want to make it too much more than what it is, but that's one of those things. It's given me a sense of purpose every day. When I wake up and I see the mail coming, I'm like, all right, people will ask me, and they'll let me know. If I don't put the mail out there, they'll tweet at me. They'll send me direct messages, and they'll say, hey, man, where's the mail at? I've been waiting for the mail all day. So, it gives me a sense of purpose, and I like doing it. It's fun. Everyone seems to have a good time with it. So, I'm going to keep doing it, man. So all this is over, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, you might as well, like you did. It's unique. It's funny. People are catching on, and you're good at it. You take this mundane, everyday thing and you turn it into something that's really entertaining. So I think you came up with a great idea, and I love it. So I think a lot of other people do too. So yeah, I mean, I keep on going. Now, are you getting? I think I noticed. Are you getting advertisements in there now? Is that happening or?
Yeah, I've had some of the companies that I worked with for the other broadcasts that I do. Some of those companies will send me stuff, which is pretty funny. And
well, I guess I'm saying, is there a monetary situation here? Can this become a new job for you?
No, I haven't. Like I talk about Real Team Real Estate. A very good friend of mine, that's his real estate company. He actually does advertising with the Oakland Grizzlies. My other, one of my best friends in the world, he owns a data installation company called D2 Technologies.
Okay.
So just because those guys are my friends and they're business owners, that's kind of why I started, saying their name before I did it. And then it blows up like this. And I've had people ask me that. They're like, are people paying to advertise with you? And I'm never going to charge, somebody money, to advertise for me getting my mail. So I've had people that, send me a message. They're like, hey, can you shout out my company? I'll do it. I don't care. It's all in good fun. So,
yeah.
It's never, I'm never going to sell out. Mail time will never sell out unless it's too much money to say no.
Well, that's what hey, yeah, man, it's dark times right now, man. Anyway, you can get some money, man.
Yeah, if there's a corporation out there, that wants to lay out 5 figures for it, then I'll eat these words. You can print out a transcript of me saying this, and I'll eat that transcript.
And sleep on a bed of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Man.
What was it? I think it's Mad Men. It was Mad Men. He said, "How do you sleep at night?" It's like on a bed full of money. You know?
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, you know, if you got to sell out, you got to sell out, man. It is what it is in these crazy times. But Neal, it's a great way to end this conversation because, like I said, that stuff is great, man. The veil time. I think it's been real entertaining, and I think I look forward to when sports get back going and seeing you on TV because I've seen a lot of Grizzly games and I know like the big ones for me is when OU and U of D get together, man, and you know, so I'm looking forward to like when that goes again and Detroit City FC being on TV, you know, we're on hold right now, but eventually that's going to get going again. So I'm excited to see you broadcast those games. And real quick, you got a couple podcasts that are going out. If you want to shout those out too, I know the Wear the Bear podcast. Is that like the official like OU sports podcast?
Yeah, the Wear the Bear podcast, sponsored by the Evans Law Group. So I did an episode of that today with Mike Brasso and. You know, earlier you talked about like the professional athletes that have come from Oakland. I would venture a guess to say that there's not many mid-major schools out there that have a guy playing in the NBA, a guy playing in Major League Baseball, a PGA Tour winner, and a guy playing in the MLS, which Steve Clark is doing for the Portland Timbers, who was a goalkeeper under Eric Pogue at Oakland University. So, I mean, we have it popping, man, in terms of professional athletes. So, you know, it's something where I talk about stuff around the Oakland program, and you know, if you're a Golden Grizzlies fan, or I try to keep it entertaining for sports fans in general. Like I said, I talked with Mike Brasso of the Tampa Bay Rays today. On the latest episode, we talked about what he's doing to try to stay in shape as a Major League Baseball player during all of this. Also, too, I do the I do the Straight Cash Homie podcast with my good friend Cam Evans, and we talk about the money side of sports. It's not stuff that happens on the field. It's all labor relations and sport, you know, the impact of sports gambling and advertising contracts and contracts themselves and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a business side of sports store, kind of like I am, Straight Cash Homie, HOMIE, you can subscribe to that. Cam Evans and he does a really great job. He's very entertaining to talk to, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're a sports money dork, give that one a listen.
Absolutely. Real quick on that, how ironic is it that like we finally got sports gambling in Michigan, and then the next day sports shuts down? Like, how ironic is that? Like,
yeah, that's a tough thing, and I would, you know, on the Straight Cash Only podcast, I talked about that. How I really think it's unfortunate for the state of Michigan that they're lagging behind as far as the online component of sports gambling goes, because when they open these sports back up, if casinos aren't open yet, Michigan's going to lose out on a boom time of sports betting that people are going to be able to do on their phones, and it's something that they're going to be starved to do because it's an activity that you can do as you sit there and watch these games. Like say the NBA goes to Disney or Vegas or whatever, but it's not open to, you know, we're not back to having crowds yet. Those people that work in the digital space as far as sports betting goes, they'll be able to operate, and the people of Michigan won't be able to do it. And you're going to lose out on a lot of tax revenue, because that's the point of all this, man. It's finally to be able to generate a form of tax revenue. It's not gonna fix the roads. It's not gonna fix education like everybody thinks that it's going to. But more money or some money is better than no money.
Yeah. And
they're going to miss out. They're going to miss out on all that. That's sad that they weren't ready to. You know, I don't know the operations behind it. I'm not having those discussions, but it's sad they're going to miss out on that.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. But what are we going to do? You know, we just got to stay patient, wait this thing out, and you know, just wait for the day that sports gets back. I don't know how long it's going to take things to get back to, you know, quote unquote normal. But you know, we just got to stay patient and just try to stay safe and healthy, I guess, right now. You know.
Yeah, you said it, my friend. Appreciate it.
Yeah, but Neal, like I said, I could talk to you all day, buddy. But you know, I'll let you go, man. This has been fascinating, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join the Detroit Sports Sit Down. And I'll be looking forward to that mail time.
All right, for you about 20 minutes, man.
All right. All right. Thanks, Neal.
All right. Yep. Take it easy.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Detroit Sports Sit Down, and that was Neal Ruhl. What a great conversation. Great guy. I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and you guys stay safe and stay healthy out there. Peace.